Hi, this is going to be a video on kind of my vision for Monster High designs, made in a perfect world where, they're made in higher quality, kind of like collector quality. They're aimed for a slightly older audience, that being more of like teens and older teens rather than like kids and tweens, and maybe where they're sold for like, $30 max. I say this to give reasoning to my designs, as I know, like, it is a kid playline, and a lot of the elements for my designs either wouldn't be good for play or appealing to kids. We're gonna start the lineup off with Frankie, just because, they're usually kind of, the main ghoul, especially with Gen 1, with these designs, I took a lot of inspiration mostly from Gen 1 and Gen 3. I'm just not super partial to Gen 2. I feel like a lot of Gen 2, they all just kind of like blur together. No one really seems to have like their own sense of style in it, but I feel like in Gen 1 and Gen 3, the characters in both those gens have a pretty distinguished style and personality in both of them. So with Frankie, I wanted to play more into their like asymmetrical designs that I see kind of a lot in Gen 1 and Gen 3, but I really wanted to play it up and I really wanted them to be pretty mismatched as well. But along with that, I wanted to keep their like preppiness and their like kind of academia style with it. I was really inspired by Gen 3's Frankie's like silhouette and especially like their boots, which you'll see here in a minute. I really like the different like levels of boots, especially like with one being like a lower ankle boot and one being like a knee-high boot. I also wanted like a main feature of their design to be like straps that you'd see kind of like on the lab table that they were made on or whatever. You'll see it on the boots here in a second, and I end up turning their headband into looking like a strap as well. But I just think that it kind of adds like an environmental factor into their design, which I ended up really liking. I moved their bolts to being their earrings, and I kept their prosthetic leg that they have in Gen 3. I also wanted to make their hair look like wild and electrified. So then we move on to Draculaura, and while I wanted Frankie to be the tallest, or one of the tallest of the main six, I wanted Draculaura to be the shortest and like the stoutest. I really like that they made that design choice with her in Gen 3, but I really wanted to push it in my lineup. I tried to aim for a more like old school Lolita style with Draculaura, because I was talking to my friend who knows a lot about like Lolita styles, and he told me that like old school Lolita is like a good mix between like gothic Lolita and Hime Lolita. I probably butchered that, my apologies. But I really did like a lot of the outfits I saw for old school Lolita, and I thought it really did fit Draculaura really well. I wanted to give him a parasol just because I felt like it really fits with him being a vampire, and I also just thought it'd be really cute to, like a really cute accessory to come with her, and even like in different lines or anything, she could have like different parasols that come with each line. I also wanted to just include a lot of heart and bow details on her as well. So now we move on to Claudine, and with them, I really wanted to kind of give them a more casual look, but still make them quite fashionable, because I still want them to be the like fashion designer of the group. But I do like when artist characters tend to dress a bit more casual, or like in a way that reflects their like comfort in their studio a lot more. I don't want it to seem like Claudine would sacrifice style for comfort, though, which I do try to get through with this design. I also play with some asymmetry here with the pant legs on the overalls, but I wanted it to be more in a way of to show that Claudine would kind of upcycle her clothes. I've played with the idea of Claudine having a monocle for a bit just because I think it's funny, honestly. I just think it's funny, but I do like them needing some type of eyesight assistance, but I don't exactly know how I feel about their glasses in Gen 3, so I just really wanted to kind of like, I don't know, play with that, and I thought a monocle was a fun, stylish choice. My Laguna was very inspired by his Gen 1 design, so I didn't try to change a lot. I tried to keep them around the same height, or maybe even taller than Frankie, because I've always just seen Laguna as being like really lanky and long. For their silhouette, I wanted to focus on the typical like swimmer's body, but not just in their body type, but also with, you'll see in a bit, I add on a jock jacket for them, and I just wanted to like really drive home that like wide shoulder but like skinny legs silhouette for them. I gave him like no jewelry and like minimal accessories because I was just thinking about like them trying to get ready for swim and like trying to get changed, and I really didn't feel like they needed a whole lot because of that. I just really wanted to focus on like the sporty aspect of their design. And in my line, they wouldn't be like a jock of all trades, but more so just focused on swim team. They would just be like captain of the swim team or something. With Cleo, I really wanted to lean into like ancient Egyptian clothing and fashion. I gave them kind of a messed up nose, mostly because of the mummification process and you know how they have to take out certain organs and stuff through the nose, but also due to like jokes and like Daria and stuff about like people who get nose jobs and their nose is like collapsing inward. I just thought it'd be like a fun. I wanted them to be incredibly decorated with beads, jewelry, etc. Since they're a person of royal status, he would have been buried with lots of these possessions. I wanted their silhouette to be very flowy, but also pretty concise as well. So, with the staff, I don't want to call the staff an accessory, as I would want it to work as sort of a mobility aid, so I'm just going to call it like an extra piece or an extra. I would want the staff to be what is keeping them alive. I modeled it after a daffodil since it fits the golden theme, and because it is a symbol of rebirth. So, with Ghoulia, again, I'm a really big fan of their Gen 1 design. I'm not super partial to their Gen 3 design, I'll get into it later, but I tried to keep a lot of elements of their Gen 1 design, while also still making it my own. I wanted to lean more into it being a zombie and how the rot would affect them, and because of this, I ended up giving them elbow crutches, and they'd use these crutches pretty regularly, and I would even make it to where, like, in future lines, they would have, like, different crutches that would coordinate with their outfit. I went for a very 2010 scene or emo style for it, because that's pretty present in their Gen 1 design, and I wanted to lean more into it. I would still want them to be nonverbal. I've seen another design by Kate Torres, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, where they have an AAC device, and I really like that concept. So now we get to the line art, and there's not really much to say here. I just use colored line art, which I try to use in all my fully finished redesign lineups, especially for series with characters who have, like, assigned colors. I wanted Frankie to be green, Drac to be pink, Claudine to be purple, Laguna to be bluish green, Cleo gold, and Ghoulia red. Besides that, I just added more detail with the clean line art that I didn't really care to achieve in the sketch. So we are back to Frankie, and I really like with Frankie's skin is a couple different colors, so I used 2 different greens, a lighter blue, and a dark purple. I also wanted to showcase different skin types, mostly by giving one of Frankie's skin patches acne. I wanted to keep the green theme while also staying with semi-neutral tones by using some yellows, whites, and dark beiges. I wanted the most saturated colors on them to be blue, purple, and green. I tried to make their eyes a lot more noticeably mismatched, with one of them being like a metallic prosthetic eye. I've tried giving Frankie colored streaks in their hair in past designs, and I didn't really like it, so I just kept to their black and white hair with more of an emphasis on the white, with the black seeming to be in patches. I wanted to make sure I also kept plaid in their design. I wanted one shoe to be a steel-toed work boot just because I think it's fun to include more protective wear in fashion, and it adds to the lab work feel I was going for. I gave them some asymmetrical makeup, and then I also feel like I could do better on the sweater vest, but I can improve that in the future. So with Drac, I lost a lot of the initial coloring in a video. I recorded it, and then it was just gone, so goodbye to that. I gave Drac more of a grayish pink skin tone to help give that dead feel, but also to help make her makeup pop. This isn't color related, but I've always wanted to play with the idea of Drac having poor eyesight or being photosensitive since bats are nocturnal. I didn't really know how to include that in this design, but if I draw her in the future or for different lines, I think I'll try to demonstrate that better. For his makeup, I wanted to keep the heart theme and do some cute heart-shaped eyeshadow and lipstick. So I've always really liked the idea of Claudine using a lot of neutral colors, but for this I, 1, wanted to stick to her usual colors, and 2, didn't want her to be washed out by the others. I ended up using neutrals on Cleo, and as I stated before, Frankie is supposed to be more neutral toned, so I decided to just do a 180 and use neons. I still use a tan base for her overalls, but later I add a pattern to it. I'm a huge fan of when Claudine has purple and green in her palette together, so I took inspiration from Dawn of the Dance and Skulltimate Secrets Claudine for this color palette. I know gold jewelry is kind of a staple of Claudine's fashion, at least in Gen 1, but I had the Gloom Beach set growing up where she has colorful earrings, and I've always really liked that on her. I added a sheer pant leg on the overalls. As I mentioned earlier, I think that she would upcycle her clothes, and I felt like this demonstrated that hobby of theirs pretty well. I wanted to keep her having animal patterns on their clothes because I've always found that really cute, and I felt like it was a good way to make her casual style a lot more fashionable. I've always been a fan of Laguna's Gen 1 colors. If it's not clear, they were my favorite as a kid. I do like its Gen 3 colors too, so I tried to combine them in a way I felt worked. I really like that Gen 3 Laguna has two-tone transparent legs, so I wanted that in my design, but instead I flipped the colors, because I do think it's a little weird that they're entirely pink now. They're still super cute and one of my faves of Gen 3, I just wanted to use Gen 3 elements to make him more recognizable to people who know him in Gen 1. I wanted to lean into like Chloron green blonde hair for him, since it's a swimmer, and I wanted to keep its blue streaks. At one point I tried to add in pink streaks, but I just didn't feel like it worked with this design. I didn't add it on video, but I later went back to add on a scale pattern to the jacket because I felt like it was really plain and boring, and I ended up really liking the scale pattern on it once I added it. I wanted his fishnets to be the brightest thing on it, so I tried to keep the rest of its colors subdued. With Cleo, I really wanted to play with browns and blues because I feel like that color combination is really underutilized in a lot of palettes. The blues ended up being more greenish, but I still really liked the way the colors on him came out. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted gold to be a big part of their design and therefore their colors, as it would make sense with how royal burial was treated in Egypt. I wanted to balance the gold out with these greenish blues for their jewelry and hair beads. In the future, if I did more lines, I would love to include some ruby reds and emerald greens in his design. Since this would be the base doll, I wanted to keep it kind of simple. I wanted him to have a lot of sheer fabrics too, with the cape and skirt being the two main sheer pieces. The skirt I wanted to make ombre into being sheer just because I liked the idea of their wraps slowly showing through the skirt. I think it would be cool if most of their makeup looks were just graphic liner styles, so I tried to work with that with the idea for his makeup. Overall, I just wanted to make them look super shiny and decorated without cluttering them or having them distract from the other ghouls. Reiterating what I said earlier, I really do like Ghoulia's Gen 1 design and colors, and I don't really want to depart too far from it. I'm going to be honest, I really don't like their Gen 3 design or colors, and I wish if they were going to give them a skater aesthetic, which I think is what they're going for, I wish they would have given them some pants and more fashion in line with either 90s or early 2000s skaters, or the more recent skater fashion trends, which still call upon those 90s and 2000s trends. I wanted to keep its hair and skin kind of subdued to give that dead look, and I kept a similar blue for its vest and shoes too. To give more of a scene flair, I used brighter pinks and greens to give the neon complements that a lot of scene styles have. I've also just seen some really cute Ghoulia designs that have a lot of green, and I wanted to give it a shot. I gave it some dyed streaks, and if I did more lines in the future, I would love to play around with their hair dye and change it. I added some more of that swirling brain texture on the vest. I added an ombre to their hair, and I'm kind of torn on how I feel about it. I don't think it looks like the greatest thing ever, but I also feel like it doesn't hurt the design, and I kind of like it, so I just left it in. So here's the full lineup. I'm pretty happy with how they turned out, and it's always just so fun to design a baseline for them. I've been doing it for fun for a couple years now, and it's always just great design practice because they all have such distinct styles and personalities that are great to work with when designing. I had a ton of fun doing these, and I have some more redesign ideas in mind for future videos, but if you have any ideas, let me know. Thank you for watching!